guys, and welcome back to another video in this week's Java tutorial. So, like I promised, this video is going to be kind of a quick project. We're going to learn how to create our own function that can find the minimum and the maximum of two numbers. So, if you can recall in our Intro to Java videos, there was one video where we talked about the math library. And there were the minimum and maximum functions, where we would do math.max and then give two numbers, then do math.min and give two numbers. Well, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're creating our own function instead of using a function from the math library. So basically, let's walk through how we're going to do this. We'll start off and we are going to take two parameters, okay? So we're going to take two integer parameters, and then we're going to print out the minimum and maximum. So how we're going to do that is we're going to compare the numbers. It would be really helpful if you use if-else statement. So that's just a hint. If you use an if-else statement, it would make your life a lot easier. Then another hint is to create an empty variable first. So if you were to do your minimum, so say you're finding the minimum, then at the very beginning create a minimum variable that is empty, so it has no value. But then you set that value equal to whatever the smaller number is, that way you can return it later. I will explain more of this in a second, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, let's get rid of all this stuff that we had from our last video. Let's get rid of all of it. Okay, so again, let's start off in the main function, but outside of in the main class, outside of the main function, and start off with static. But this time, since we're going to return a number, we're actually going to return a number. We're going to do static int. We're no longer returning nothing. We are returning an integer. Static int find min. So find the minimum for me. Then we're going to take in two integers, integer x and integer y, because we're going to compare these two integers. Okay. Perfect. So it's saying I have a red line, but it's okay. It'll disappear as we go on. So now let's do this first. We're going to do int min. Okay, so int min, what this is it is an integer, and it has no value as of now. Why we created this, you will see in a second. So then let's go ahead and start comparing integers x and y. If x is greater than y, min is equal to y. Okay, can anybody guess why I did this? I'll tell you why I did this. So since we're comparing two numbers x and y, if the first number is greater than the second number, then we set the minimum number to be the second number. Why? Because the smaller number is less, right? So then, if this is the case, then the smaller number is y. Else, and else is basically if the other way around, then min will be x. So now all we have to do is return min. Voila! Okay, so this is our function. Now let's go over it again in detail. It looks kind of complicated, but if you really think about the detail, all of it makes sense. We start off by comparing two numbers. We have an empty variable to kind of store our final minimum value and return it later. So if the first number is greater than the second number, then we set the second number to be the smaller. So we set second number to be the empty minimum variable. However, if it's the opposite way around, then we set the first number to be the minimum number. Then no matter what, the minimum number will be saved to the integer min, and then we just return that number. Okay, so now guys, this is why our return type is int and no longer void, because we've used the return keyword. This return keyword is basically saying that once we use this return keyword, the return type is no longer void, and min in this case is an integer. So whatever data type this min is, we're going to put the same thing in our return type. So we're returning an integer. Now let's go ahead and try and run this. So let's do, there is a catch when we're running this function though, because if we simply try to do find min, and then we did two numbers, say 4 and 8, let's try this and let's see what happens first. It could work, maybe it won't. Let's see. I'm actually kind of curious too. It's not going to give us anything. So notice that our program has stopped and nothing has gotten printed out. Well, the reason is because when we return a minimum, we have to assign this to a new value. So int number is equal to find min of 4 and 8. So what I'm doing here is it's basically saying that when we just print this out, you don't get a specific value. You have to assign the value of this method to an integer and then go ahead and print this integer back out. Again, I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but it's not that hard to just assign it to a new integer, so we can do that. So now when we run it, we can go ahead and see that our smaller number is going to be, come on now, Repple, chop chop. So while we're waiting for that to run, let's explain max. So max, guys, is going to be pretty much the same exact thing as min. Oh, there we go. Look, it ran. So we get 4 printed out. Why? Because between 4 and 8, 4 is the smaller number. So what happened was it compared. Is 4 greater than 8? No. So that means that it goes to else. So then else, since 4 is not greater than 8, 4 would be saved as our minimum variable here, and it returns the minimum, which is 4. Good, we've done our minimum function. Let's go ahead and create our maximum function, which is pretty much the same thing. So static, we're still returning an integer. This time we're finding the maximum. We're still going to take in 2 integers, int A, int B, right? Because we're still comparing 2 numbers here. Then let's save another int max. This is our empty placeholder that we'll save our maximum value to in a second. So if int A is greater than int B, then we're going to save max as A. Because if A is greater than B, then the bigger one would naturally be A. If it's the opposite, then our max will be B. And so finally, we're going to return our maximum integer. So this is very similar to our minimum, right? And it pretty much is the same thing. It's just we change it from bigger to smaller. Again, let's walk through the logic one more time. We have to assign it int big number is equal to find max, and our A can be 45 and our B can be 2,345. And then system.out println, or we can just do print big number. Okay, so now let's run it, see what we get, and kind of think through the logic. We run our code here, and it's going to first give us the minimum of 4 and 8, then it's going to give us the maximum of 45 and 2,345. So it gives us 2,345. Why? Because 2,345 is obviously bigger than 45. So let's go through. Our A in this case is 45, our B is 2345. So A is greater than B. Is 45 greater than 2345? Well, no. So in this case, max is not A. So then we would go to the else. So the max would be B. So the maximum would be 2345. Then, since that value was saved to the integer, we would return that integer, and that's basically what we did up here. Okay? So guys, that quick activity hopefully put together everything that we've learned for our methods. We kind of connected the dots from creating our first basic function to taking parameters to our return types. So hopefully that made sense. Watch it a couple times, especially if it was a little bit confusing. And yeah, I'll see you guys in next week's videos. Bye, guys.